All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us on episode 202. Maybe we're on 202 of Blowback, Exposing Imperial Decline. I've got my regular co-host, Ian Cummer. He is streaming live from his dacha in Crimea. He didn't tell me that, but I can look behind him and see where he is. Otherwise, he spends time at his apartment in Moscow, but he's probably worried about drone strikes. So he's hanging out in Crimea.
So he's less worried in Crimea. Okay, cool.
I don't know. Special guest, Indi Samarajiva. Thank you so much, Indi, for joining us. I have seen your most recent, not your most recent article, because you just put one up a few hours ago, but the one before that I've been seeing everywhere on Facebook. Everybody's sharing it. We really enjoy your writing and appreciate all your work. And I thank you for coming on our show. But so we're just wanted to discuss, what's going on. And, there is a lot to say, but I want to kind of summarize everything, where we're at, in global history. And I could take 3 hours to do that, or I could try and do it in 3 minutes. I mean, essentially, after 1991, the West, the U.S. particularly, was in the unipolar moment. And ever since then, China has been rising, and Russia and Iran, and these powers are not allowing the West to just do whatever they want. And so the West has identified them as threats to their hegemony, and they're engaged in a struggle to really deal with these three countries who are obstinate and who are obstacles to their unrivaled global hegemony. So I think that part of that strategy is going to involve just really, causing a huge global conflagration, for lack of a better term, which is going to, be really disastrous, for the planet and for humanity. But I think the end goal is to cause a lot of problems for everyone, but they're hoping that they're going to cause more problems for China especially, and then Russia and Iran, than is going to afflict themselves. And so relative to these other powers, the United States and the West hopes to be in a stronger situation after everything is said and done. Like this is the hope that I see that they're after. And like the war against Iran, the ongoing issue with Iran doesn't seem to be going too well for the West, right? Because they're realizing that they don't have the kind of ability and power that they hope they have. So I think they really wanted to do in Iran what they did in Venezuela, and they're not able to. So now they're kind of stuck. But I don't think they've given up. I think that the primary effort continues, and we're going to see continued escalation and continuing in that direction, as opposed to an understanding that, hey, this is futile, this is immoral, let's just rethink this and we'll all, just get along. So given that general approach and context, which people may or may not agree with, I was just hoping, Indi, that you could kind of speak to that in your own way, in your own perspective. So, and talk about your article and explain how you kind of see this group of people that own the United States and own the West, as kind of as an organized crime syndicate. And they're really not interested in the things that people think they're interested in. Like, our government ought to be representing the people and ought to be trying to do things to help people, make their lives better. But they don't really care about that. They care about themselves and their own interests. But you liken them to an organized crime syndicate. Can you maybe take it from there?
Yeah, sure. And thanks for
I just want to add, just as a reminder for anyone who just tuned in, that his article is linked in the description of this video, so you can follow along or read it later. It is a good article, so we recommend you actually find the link and read it.
Thanks, Ian, and thanks, Billy Bob. It's good to be on here again. So honestly, the gist of the article is kind of contained in a Goodfellas scene. I don't know, I assume you guys have seen Goodfellas, but if you haven't seen Goodfellas, it depicts what's called a mafia bust out. So I think that's actually more useful for understanding what's happening with America than all the politics. I think all the politics is kind of a sideshow. It's like WWE. It's like World Wrestling Entertainment. There's a villain and there's a good guy. It could be John Fetterman this week. It could be like that Joe Manchin then the week before. It just rotates, but it's all entertainment. But it's important to understand colonialism from the beginning is a business. And America was not like a sort of revolution of the people. Only landowning white males could vote, like a fraction of the population at the time. It was always a business. And Sri Lanka was colonized by the VOC, the Dutch East India Company, and the British East India Company. It was always a business. And it's still a business. And the business model, the simplest way to understand it, it seems to sort of like regenerate spontaneously in the mafia. So that's the easiest way to understand it. So that Goodfellas scene I'm talking about, if you're unfamiliar, there's a restaurant owner. So the restaurant owner you could take as America, whoever, America's political owners. That's the normal entity. And that restaurant owner is having trouble with this guy Tommy, who's a bit violent. And so they go to the mob boss for essentially protection. And then the mob boss takes over the restaurant as like a silent partner. And then they start to do what's called a bust out. So a bust out is where you take over a functioning business and then you start unloading goods out the back. It doesn't matter what you sell them for. It's all profit. You start running up bills on the joint's credit. That means you take the place's credit and you buy booze, you buy meat, you buy furs, there's a Sopranos example where they buy plane tickets, they buy water coolers. It doesn't matter because nobody's going to pay the bill anyway. And then you just sell the stuff out the back and then you make money. And then when this finally gets to the point that it cannibalizes the real business to the point that it's non-functional, you can't borrow anymore, then what they say in Goodfellas is when you can't borrow another buck from the bank, then you light a match, you bust the place out, and you just burn the place down. So the place is called the Bamboo Lounge in Goodfellas, and they just burn it down, and then they move on to the next business to bust out. The Sopranos example is pretty good as well. There's this guy, Davey Scatino, he has a sporting goods store, and they do the same thing. He gets into a debt trap with the mafia because of his gambling habit, but he gets into a debt trap where his debt is forever increasing. He's never going to make the vig on that. And then they bust out his sporting goods store. So they occupy it. They start buying stuff on the joint's credit. They buy water coolers. They buy plane tickets. It doesn't matter. They buy food, and then they just sell it for pennies on the dollar. And they just unload it out the back. And then when the business finally collapses, I think Davey, the owner, loses his family and he has to leave leave the city. And then they just move on to the next one. So that's what's happening with America now. You're nearing the end stage of a bust out. And look, your elites have said since the 1980s that they're going to run the place like a business, and this is the business they're running it as. Now, I'm using the bust out example, but there's a more obvious or more direct example, which is private equity. So this bust out model is called a leveraged buyout among like sort of, I guess, the white collar mafia, the WASP mafia. And this is a pretty standard business model. Toys R Us is one example. That's where you buy a business based leveraging the business. So you go to the bank and say, I'm about to own Toys R Us, loan me like $2 billion, which is hilarious. It's like me going and saying, I'm about to own a house, give me some cash now, like without having bought the house, but that's actually like a legal business model. And then they buy a business like Toys R Us, and then they load it up with debt. They pay themselves consultancy fees, and they sell crap out for whatever. They can do some insider trading for a bit of like light profit making. And then when that business is busted out, they just leave it for dead and they move on to the next one. And so you could also say that this is a leveraged buyout of America, which has been happening since the 1980s. And I was looking up how much presidential elections cost, and it's kind of like Toys R Us and buying the U.S. presidency are kind of similar price tags. It's shocking, but they bought presidencies forever. They bought Supreme Courts. That's all bought and paid for. And what's happening is a bust out. So in Ukraine, they're unloading weapons out the back. They don't care where it goes or if it works. They're making money on all that. In Gaza, they've unloaded weapons. Now they're unloading the oil. So they're just busting the whole country up. So people look at it and say, oh, this is like bad for America's political interests. This is bad for the American people. Like, nobody cares. This is a bust out. Like, they're just getting paid. And if you have to understand the DNA of double entry bookkeeping, the DNA of capital, which is double entry bookkeeping. So all this stuff like, oh, these prices are rising. Oh, like this number is going up. That's showing up on somebody's balance sheet as a profit. So the organized criminals that are running your country are making a killing from all the killing, from all the price increases to Americans. They're getting paid for all that. And it's unlike China, for example, where they're using their strategic reserves for their own country. The U.S. is unloading their strategic reserves to goose the markets and to make money. So you guys are just being busted out.
I like that. I like that. And it's really far more useful perspective and way to understand what's going on rather than, the mainstream narratives. And of course, we already know the mainstream narratives when you have, it's the Democrats versus the Republicans, and it's conservatives versus liberals, and they're both just trying to, represent the people with their various values, and the conservatives want to conserve values, and the liberals want to have more liberal values than the conservatives, and that's really what politics is, and that's really what's going on, and it's just an imperfect democracy. Like all of this, the mainstream nonsense that is just kind of indoctrinated into everybody's head, it has nothing to do with reality. And so the way that you described it is far closer to what is actually going on, and that's that's an important it's important for people to understand that the media and the narratives and this idea of a liberal democracy and a representative government just doing their best in a chaotic environment is it has nothing. That's not what is going on.
It's advertising. It's like trying to analyze Coke
Yeah.
and Pepsi versus their advertising. Like, is the boy going to get the girl? Like, are they going to drive the car? Like, I don't know. It's nonsense. It's advertising. It's a business.
Yeah, no, I think you made the point kind of in your article that liberalism is the advertising for oligarchy, and I say oligarchy, but you're saying criminal mafia. So the criminal mafia has their advertising, and it's the ideology of liberalism, which
I mean, I think an oligarchy is just a more successful mafia, right? They've just become and in The Sopranos, there's a scene or there's an episode like that where Tony encounters these like white collar guys doing their like stock trading, and he's like, whoa, like they're operating at like another level. They're doing the same stuff as us, but at like a higher level.
He was impressed. So where are we going to go? So, okay, we can talk about, go ahead, Ian, go ahead.
Well, so I read your article and, listened to your, your synopsis just now. And there is, the idea of late stage capitalism. There is, I think, the way you described it as basically a mafia culture. It's a parasitic, but it is a parasitic relationship to the host being the country, right? So British Empire, the even the Soviet Union, and the USA now, you could say, had this parasite class that demolished the country. But maybe I'm just misunderstanding. It's just because it sounds like it's a deliberate plan. I'm not sure. I do think these people think like the Sopranos. I got money to build this bridge, but I'm not going to build the bridge. I'm just going to keep the money. Or we got this social program. I'm just going to keep the money and not use the money. That's corruption. Yeah, that's mafia. That's mafia system. But is that I don't know if that's a deliberate plan, more of as just a collapse when a system has rotted to the point where it can't.
Well, I don't know if there's like humans in charge per se, but once you sort of incorporate greed as corporations, where their only thing is to grow, and that you have the first IPO in 1602 of the VOC, like once you sort of incorporate that and make those legal people, that is in their programming. So it's in their sort of decision making. It is like the stock market has to double every 20, 30 years. That's 2-3% growth per year. That's just programmed in. So it is the plan within capitalism, as it is the mathematical plan that the thing has to keep growing. So what you're seeing is this bifurcation between the market and the real economy. And you can see that split happening. So for a while, you could see that things tracked, right? Like the S&P would track with sort of consumer sentiment. But if you look up those two metrics now, they bifurcated. So yeah, the parasite is killing the host. But for a while, it seemed it was good. The going was good. Like the artificial being and the natural being seemed kind of in sync. But now it's getting out of sync. And like a scam, like it's deals with the devil. Like they go good until the end. It's they get you on the interest rate really in the end.
So I like to just contextualize it as class, and I talk about class, and so I would say that what you describe as the oligarchy or the mafia is just the ownership class. It's the primary beneficiaries of the system of capital, of the global system of capital that has been going for a few hundred years now.
Yeah, and that goes back to the American Revolution. Like the American Revolution was a revolution of that class. It was the propertied class.
Yeah, well, and then it wasn't just the Americans that had a successful revolution that overthrew a monarchy, right? Like the Dutch overthrew a monarchy, the British overthrew a monarchy. And so there was a capitalist revolution against feudalism. And I argue that essentially oligarchy is the system that replaced, hereditary monarchy. So feudalism was replaced by capitalism, which is oligarchy. And I point to socialism as the necessary and inevitable improvement on the capitalist system. And Marx looked at capital very closely. He observed how it works, and he talked about a logic of capital. And so you mentioned the logic of capital, and the logic of capital is towards monopoly power. And so this is when you talk about monopoly power on a global scale, this is what the leaders of capital in the West, the Western capitalist class. This is what is driving these events. This is what is driving these wars. Is this it's inexorable. This inexorable pursuit of monopoly power on a global scale. And they've identified China as their primary rival. And I think like the war in Iran that we're seeing now, and it's kind of in a holding pattern. We've been in a holding pattern for a while, and every so often Trump is threatening to initiate and escalate a huge bombing campaign. I think if and when he does that, I think the world will change forever. I don't think we'll ever go back to anything that I've experienced the last 50 years of my life. And he keeps threatening. He keeps threatening to do it every week. And so it was a couple of weeks ago. It was like, we're going to end Iran as a civilization. And then on Monday, he was like, okay, the Saudis and the Qataris asked me not to, start it again. And so I'm going to hold
he
off
gives
for
a shit.
Right. But it's interesting because so it's interesting to conjecture about what is going on. Like, why aren't you just initiating now? What are the factors that are keeping you from doing it? And are you really not ever going to do it because you understand it's going to be a catastrophe? Or are you just waiting on timing? Like, all of these are the questions that I have about what's going on. But I understand it, within this context of capital, within the context of really end-stage capitalism, and how they've painted themselves into a corner, into this unsustainable global system that they no longer, can rule over to their satisfaction. And so I think, they're really willing to burn it all down. And I think it's just a matter of time. And every week I hear Trump and I think, oh shit, Trump's really going to burn it all down starting, today. And then he hedges and then we're here just to talk about it. But
look at when in the week he's doing this, right? All this stuff is like timed with markets and sort of like certain treasury prices. If you look at the class structure of who's running America, it's not industrialists anymore. It's not people that do business. It's sort of these wheeler dealers and financiers. It's basically the private equity class. So what they're doing is a pump and dump, like it's an old school pump and dump. Like they're pumping and dumping the whole global economy, and they're making money on the volatility. It's a bust out. So you're at the stage where you light a match, and you can make money at that point. You can make money like basically what they do in the mafia, or at least in the movies. I'm not a mafia expert per se, but in the movies it's like, there's an insurance policy. So you get the insurance policy, or by simply having information that some big thing is going to happen, you can profit from that. So he's making these what seems to us like politically idiotic and crazy statements, but they're if you look at them in terms of market manipulation, they're fantastic. They're fantastically effective, and people are making like documented money on the back of this, not just on Poly market, but on the main markets. So if you follow the money, like this all makes perfect sense. And look, Trump is out in like 2-3 years, right? He's just making money, and the people around him are not necessarily career politicians. They're making bank. It's a great. If you follow the money, it all makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, there's a little bit of diminished efficacy in these pump and dump things because people are seeing Trump do this, a few too many times. And I think, if you look at the price of oil, the last time he did the pump and dump, threatening and then drawing back, it was like a 9% change. It like the price of a barrel of oil went down 9%, $9. Today or yesterday, it barely budged. So I think to whatever extent that's true, it's like it's diminishing its returns for him. But the ultimate question, Indy, is to what end? Like, are we saying that the Western capitalist class is going to resign themselves to allowing China to be the superpower, or are we saying that they're going to just burn everything down again in the hopes that they'll remain stronger than everyone else at the end, diminish themselves, but relative to their current rivals, they'll be in a stronger position. Like, I mean, so what is their afterwards goal if it's if it's a bust out? Obviously, in a bust out, you would move on to the next business. But when we're talking about nation states, like, what nation state are they gonna move on to continue this scam and maintain their global hegemony? Because that is what I think they really care about, is not so much making money, but I think they're willing to sacrifice temporarily their own, interests, a short-term pain for the long-term gain of, removing these obstacles to their global hegemony. And if they have to sacrifice Israel, if they have to sacrifice the stock market short-term to attain this global hegemony, they are willing to do that. But I think ultimately hegemony is what they're interested in. So, I mean, can you speak to that?
I mean, I think like the global hegemony, like it's gone. So Iran, who is it? He's a Miss something. One of their martyr generals said, "It's your hand to take, but it's not your hand to let go." It's out of their hands. Iran is completely out of their hands. They can't even like land troops in Iran to start there. And I find it interesting when people talk about China, they can't even begin to think about China. If you look at the way even just like Hezbollah is using drones against Israel, or where Russia and Ukraine are using them against each other, China will be on another level entirely. China is another level entirely militarily. And Trump's trade war with China went nowhere. And when he went on his recent trip there, he's basically kissing the ring. Like, China's in the position that America was after, or for much of World War II, where the rest of the world is fighting and they're supplying. They're supplying Ukraine, they're supplying Israel, they're supplying Palestine, they're supplying Iran, they're supplying America. America's own military supply chains are deeply linked with China, and they'd be attacking their own supply lines if they ever attack China. They're never getting to China. So Trump produced some policy document, which of course they're not following, but that's what they're talking about, is pivoting back to their continent. The pivot to Asia is long gone, but they're talking about pivoting back. So the next bust out is Venezuela. Venezuela is being bust out now. Cuba, and Europe is actually the big one. So Europe, all this like Russia, Ukraine stuff, they don't give it, like, they're busting out Europe. They're deindustrializing Germany. Europe is the one getting stuck. Europe ended up buying Qatari natural gas, and like now they don't have that either. They have to buy stuff directly from America. So Europe is the one getting milked here. But I actually don't think I think they do not think long term. Like I don't think the U.S. has had an original policy idea since the 80s or 90s. They're still trying to fight the USSR, despite the USSR not existing anymore. I don't think they have an original policy idea. They're just running on, like, the brain is gone. It's just running on muscle memory.
Let me offer a counter. And I've mentioned this a couple times on the program, but if you realize that the shale oil that was discovered in the United States, and then we built a lot of technology to extract that shale oil, and but it was very expensive. So the shale oil was very expensive, And then around like 2012, we began investing heavily in big logistics to export shale oil and shale natural gas. So this was going on in 2012, and it didn't make any sense because we were building facilities in Europe, we were building facilities in the United States to export this extremely expensive oil that we couldn't compete with on the market, right? Because it was 4 times cheaper to get out of the ground in the Middle East, West Asia, and it was way cheaper for Russia just to pipe it into Europe. So there were no markets when private investors were putting in hundreds of billions of dollars into this export infrastructure, this energy export infrastructure. And so what I think from that is, I think it was obvious that the people that were investing this money were being told, given certainty that their competitors were going to be destroyed, that in the future, your competitors are going to be destroyed. So to me, this is serious planning, and this also suggests a serious strategy. It suggests serious planning and a serious strategy that's gone back more than a decade. So if you're heavily investing in this energy export infrastructure that doesn't make any market sense because you can't compete with the Middle East or Russia, and then all of a sudden from March to April, right? From March to April, or maybe it was February to March. The amount of, for instance, the amount of natural gas that Vietnam has purchased from America, from U.S. natural gas, went up 3,000%. It went up 3,000% because of the war in Iran. And so I see planning, and I see a strategy where they're really interested in creating a global energy monopoly and then weaponizing that monopoly against, their rival states, such as, Europe is kind of being victimized by it, but, they're making Europe and Asia dependent on U.S. energy exports in a way that they'd never been. And they did that by being a mafia gang, like you're saying, like they were behaving like a mafia and just really, attacking the competition. They're not playing fair. They just started a war and destroyed the competition, the Russian competition, the West Asian competition. And I expect that this trajectory, the direction that they're going in, is only going to intensify and escalate, and I think it's just a matter of time before Trump does attack Iran. And when he does that, Iran's going to retaliate, and all of West Asian energy will be taken offline for years. That's what I predict. And again, the only explanation is that this is part of a strategy to really cause devastation around the globe, and hope that you can direct that devastation more to your enemies than you yourself sustain. And then at the end of all of that, you'll be in a better situation. And that's, I think, what the diabolical plan is that they're rolling out. But so it is. They are definitely a mafioso gang. But I don't know. I say they have more strategy than you might have given them credit for.
Yeah, what you describe is it's a good plan. The problem is timing. So like after 9/11, like Wesley Clark went into the Pentagon and they said, we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years: Somalia, Sudan, Syria, Libya, Iraq, and then I'm missing some, but then it ends up with Iran. And if they'd done that in 5 years, by 2010, that would have been a great plan. But if you're taking on Iran in 2025 and you're not taking it out, that's a different situation. And if you're taking on Russia and you're not taking it out, that's a different situation, because it's a different time, right? You're talking about so even Sri Lanka, under all this tariff crap, we end up importing LPG from the US for our cooking stuff. I don't know why we're doing that, but we do. So that is working. But I mean, they have an end date on their shale gas. And then in Sri Lanka also, people are just switching to electric cars. I was just checking about getting an electric car, and then they're all sold out, as in this one particular brand, GAC, but they're all sold out. Solar panels, we had our energy crisis, people are getting that. Even Cuba is managing to limp along based on solar, all these things that didn't exist anymore and which are cheaper. So you might get another, it's like in a trishaw, I don't know if you have this in a car, but in a trishaw, the 3-wheeler that we drive, there's a little reserve tank, and you can get maybe you can get to the gas station with that. You can get maybe 5 kilometers with that, but then what? So so they're getting like a little bit extra out of this, but then what? Like things are moving on. So Sri Lanka, we're getting Russian Indian oil companies, basically the Russian Indian oil company. It's just Russian oil that goes through India and comes here, and then Russian oil is U.S. has had to unsanction that, and then everybody's getting solar. Like the world has changed. It's the plan is fine, but yes, it's a great plan. Kill the competition, but kill the competition for what? Like a product that people are phasing out, a product where the competition is growing faster. Obviously, you can't run even renewable stuff without diesel. You need the fossil fuels for a modern economy. But the world has changed. And the other point is that this idea that you can control blowback is you can't. And the US itself is actually more fragile than places like Sri Lanka, than places like, you can say Vietnam, certainly, and China is more prepared, certainly more than Iran. There's another saying, there's another part of Sopranos where he's talking to a Russian lady, and then she's like, that's a problem with you Americans. Like, you expect things to be good, and you're like constantly disappointed, whereas the rest of the world, we expect things to go bad, and we're not surprised. Like, this is, for me personally, this would be like the second crisis that I've lived to, second energy crisis, you know? Like, I have battery backups, like we have solar, we're used to it, like we have dal and like rice stored, like we can do that. In Iran, I think the oil price is probably like 11 cents per gallon. Like they can weather this for a while. China has stockpiles for years. People can weather this. The US internally, politically, if your gas gets above $6-7 a gallon, you have some societal problems. You have some, and your whole internal economy is based on this AI bubble, which has energy at the bottom of it. So if the prices at the bottom go up, then suddenly all this like funny money, like fairy economy starts to look a bit crazy. And then you get, the US is more fragile, right? They're more fragile than they think.
Man, I had so many thoughts.
Can I interject?
What?
Can I interject? I have a few thoughts of my own. So, in general, I agree with Indy that I don't see any kind of long-term strategic planning here. I think that's actually, and that's to an extent, a symptom of this. All that matters is the quarterly profits. What are the profits for this quarter? Not even what's a year from now, or let alone 5 years from now. Just this quarter we're in. What are the projected profits for it? That's the kind of extreme, not able to look past your own nose type thinking that's getting us in trouble. However, I would also say there is also a tendency to do some confirmation bias, and to when there's a pre-existing idea, to assign what you're seeing to that pre-existing idea. So I'll give you a perfect example. I think this was either a few months ago or last year. I don't remember exactly when it happened, but gold prices were very high, and Russia was selling off their gold reserves. And if you look on the usual suspects on Twitter and Facebook, Russia is collapsing. They're selling all of their gold to China because they're vassals of China and their economy is collapsing, blah, 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 blah. And then right after Russia did that, what happens? The global gold prices crashed. So everybody was smart enough to sell their gold reserves when it was high. What are they going to do now? What's Russia going to do now? Well, obviously they're going to buy gold again because the prices are low. It's literally what you're supposed to do. You buy it when the price is low, you sell it when it's high. So we see this thing Trump is doing with the now. Billy Bob and I have a disagreement on Iran. Indy, I don't know if you've caught it before, but I am of the opinion that Trump and company do not want to go back into a full-scale hot war with Iran. It went very badly. They don't want to do it again, so they're trying to invent they're doing all this other crap because they don't want to do that again. Now, what you mentioned about the USA exporting oil and gasoline to keep global prices down. And the problem with that is that it drains the USA's own strategic reserve. which is very bad. However, if you are Trump, if you are looking at this from Trump's perspective, if he's thinking, well, we're going to get that straight, we're going to have some sort of resolution with Iran within the next couple of weeks, then that actually makes sense to do. It actually makes a lot of sense to do because they're not giving away that oil for free; they're selling it. So Billy Bob's point, well, they're doing it to corner the energy market. Well, maybe that's true, or maybe they're just selling it on these ridiculously high spot prices, and then once the strait opens, that's going to bring prices, probably not to pre-war levels, but it's going to lower the prices. Then what can the USA do? They can buy it back for less than what they sold it for. So I do think there is this. I think what we're saying on the show isn't necessarily wrong, but I do think we can put our own. We can look at people. I think I have a rule for myself is don't put more thought into a decision than that person himself had made. Right. So I think there is a tendency for some of us to put more thought into Trump's decisions than Trump himself did. So I don't think it's that deep, guys. It's like, well, I think it's literally from Trump's perspective. Okay, we're going to sell high now, and then we're going to resolve this situation at the strait, and then we'll buy low. I think it's not actually deeper than that.
And if you look at Trump's sort of business history, Trump Water, Trump Casinos, which Trump Entertainment, Trump whatever University, Trump Steaks, like if you're looking for a guy Trump phone. If you're looking for a guy to sort of just this is a guy who lost money on the casinos, right? So that's kind of his specialty, is just crashing stuff and making a big show out of it.
Yeah.
So this idea that he's you're right. Like, because sometimes I'm like, why am I spending so much of my energy and intelligence trying to figure out what a stupid person is thinking? Like, maybe I'm approaching this wrong. Maybe I shouldn't put that much energy into it. You're right. But yeah, I don't think they're thinking that far ahead. I mean, Trump may believe that the strait is going to open in a few weeks, but if you read any further about it, even if it does open in a few weeks, it takes inventories and supply chains months to stabilize. And if you look at the oil crisis of the 1970s, oil prices basically never stabilized after that. They were always sort of volatile after that. This is a shock multiple times bigger than both of the 1970s oil crises combined. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that was the point I was going to make. But we didn't let Ian have a say, and so I'm glad he got to say what he wanted to say. But I was going to point out that even if things go back to normal tomorrow, like if everything goes back to normal tomorrow, I think the rational analysts already say that because of the lack of fertilizer and the lack of planting that normally would be happening right now, there's not going to be the harvest that take place at the end of the year, the beginning of next year. And you're going to see real high food prices, and you're going to see increased mortality rates in the poorest countries that can't afford these increased food prices. And you're going to see, ultimately those increased mortality rates are going to, basically be in the millions. So you're going to have millions of unnecessary, starvation deaths directly related to what has already happened. And the problem is, I don't see any solution for solving this problem. So right now, it's already caused millions of deaths. Trump doesn't care. The West doesn't care. But the question is, how much worse is this going to get? Because the longer the strait remains closed, this is compounding. This issue is compounding. The fertilizers aren't going to, where they need to go to plant the crops that people are going to need to eat, by the end of this year and the beginning of next year. And so, this is, again, part of I think the overall strategy as far as causing a global conflagration, causing a huge catastrophe, and hoping to weather that catastrophe, hoping to put yourself in an ideal place to weather that catastrophe better than your rivals are going to be able to weather that catastrophe. And again, to hopefully come out of the other side of it, in a slightly, a stronger position relative to your current rivals who are doing very well, because everybody knows that China is kicking ass. And I think Trump was hoping, that Iran would be pushed over, just like Venezuela was pushed over, and that he could go into that meeting with Xi last week from a position of relative strength, having taken over Venezuelan oil, which, the majority went to China, having, taken control of Iranian oil, the majority of which went to China. And the thing is, there's this window of opportunity that I think is driving all of this. And China is working very quickly to attain energy independence, right? They've got their alternative energy resources, wind, solar, hydroelectric, and they're also building nuclear, and they're also building coal, as fast as they can. And China can do things really quick. Nevertheless, there's about maybe a 4 or 5 year window before they achieve this energy independence. And this is why, again, this is the planning. And this is why we're seeing all these things happen so quickly. And I think it's possible that Trump is a patsy, right? I mean, these aren't Trump's plans, and Trump isn't the decider, right? Trump is the figurehead selling what is happening and managing it to a very minor extent, for PR purposes. But these aren't Trump's plans. He's just tasked with, being the figurehead of it. But I think he might have been sold a bill of goods. I think he might have been sold that Iran would be easy. And the people selling him that, understood that it doesn't matter if he finds out that it's not going to work, because he's going to be stuck. And we're going to ultimately force him into a launching of this other bombing that he keeps on forestalling. I don't think he's going to continue to forestall a second bombing campaign in Iran. And I think when he initiates it, that is when we're going to be off to the races, and nobody's going to be able to deny the global catastrophe that they have, I believe, intended from the very beginning, because that's their only hope, because there's no way you're going to be able to contain China or win a competition with China without playing dirty. And since China is the number one trade partner of 140 countries, the global economy is necessarily going to have to, have a real catastrophe in order to.
Why would he wait until the U.S. reserves are almost empty to bomb Iran? Because that's going to drive prices up, not down. Why wouldn't he bomb it and then sell U.S. oil when the prices are higher? That's the opposite.
I mean, I think he tried that, right? And I think it's so. Professor Morandi, who's somewhat reliable, I mean, as in connected in Iran, has said if they hit again, we will. He told people in Qatar and Qatar and UAE and so on to leave. He said to leave. He said it will not be habitable there, and he said we'll destroy the energy infrastructure, and I assume desalination in that region, and that will be. So some of the damage that's been done, especially to Qatar, is will take years to fix, and they haven't even started fixing it. Some of that stuff is offline. Some of their LNG stuff, those are very sensitive equipment, and it'll take 3 to 5 years. They've declared force majeure on a lot of stuff.
Natural gas fields is offline.
Yeah. So this is baked in, and then they're saying they'll burn it if Trump hits again. Now, so I think Trump has said that those guys said, as in the Gulf apostates, their vassals there, complain about it as if he gives a shit. I think it's more like that the Pentagon said, we are pretty overextended, and they can't actually do it. You have to understand that the U.S. bases are gone. They're operating in a very supply stretched, a supply stretch situation. They have to use refueling planes. They have to use Diego Garcia. They have to use Cyprus. It's not like a easy way to conduct war, and the longer they're out there, the longer this goes on, the weaker his position gets. So as in his troops, you can't keep troops in the field for that long. That goes back to Sun Tzu, especially if you're attacking a fortified city. And they have no land to land in, and the economic pressure is only building in the U.S. So time is on Iran's side, and I don't think they just don't have the control there.
But given the two options of doubling down and throwing your Hail Mary pass, or just surrendering and declaring victory, what direction are we headed? And so when I look at
I think they have a plan from last century, from 1900s, which is Pinky in the Brain, if you're familiar. What do we do tonight? Try to take over the world. So they have. If they had managed to execute it by, say, 2010, it might have worked. But 2025, 26, 27, it just gets worse and worse. So yeah, they have thrown a Hail Mary, and maybe they could have knocked out Iran. I think it was maybe kind of the last best chance they had. and they took their shot, but Iran's shots have been fired. Like the Strait of Hormuz has been closed. It's taking a while for the bullet effectively to reach the American brain, but it's getting there. And for a lot of people, they felt it already. And for a lot of the world, we already moved on. Like in Sri Lanka, we've had fuel rationing since basically day one of the war, and we're just kind of used to it. We only get 25 liters of diesel a week. People just kind of adapted around it. The world is adapting around it. This is a retreat. Like they're making a big show about it, but this is a retreat. They've lost the Gulf. They're pulling back. They'll cannibalize Europe. They'll cannibalize the Americas as much as they can. But you say like their plan is to come out better on the other side than their rivals, but they're like so much worse situated than their rivals. China, it's weird to me even talking about China because China is in the best position out of everybody. They have food reserves, they have fuel reserves, and they're not involved in any fighting. And in fact, they are supplying any fighting, and they have landlines to Russia, and they have and they're getting their stuff through Hormuz as well. So China's like the best. It's a weird, and America's an empire, right? So when people in other parts of the empire hurt, they hurt. Even attacking China, for them to seriously attack China, they would have to seriously wound themselves. So I don't think it's like there's a plan, yeah, but the plan expired about 15 years ago. So this is just the natural expiry date.
Let me kind of structure what we're saying. So, I mean, so we definitely have agreement that the plan itself will fail, that it's futile. But I'm trying to explain it. I'm trying to explain what is behind the plan, even though I agree with you that it's going to be a spectacular failure. I'm just trying to explain what is happening and why. And then based on my assessment of what is motivating them, I'm trying to predict what they're going to do. And so
I think we're viewing it through two lenses, right? So there's you're looking at it as like a political plan. So short term, after all this spills out, how do they come out better on the end? But I think the bust out analogy works in the sense that it can't just be short term. Like they can't just be trying to make some money short term.
So are they going to retreat in Iran, or are they going to double down? Like, I mean, I'm saying that Trump will initiate another bombing campaign. Like he will be forced into it because the only other option is to declare victory and concede defeat. And he's not going to do that. Go ahead, Ian.
If he was going to bomb them, why is he waiting?
No, I don't know exactly what's going on in his brain. I don't know. That's what I'm wondering. That's the question. Like, I think he will bomb. I think that's going to be the inevitable direction that he's pushed in, and he's going to do that because there's no other alternatives. And I don't think that's going to be catastrophic for the planet. I mean, that's my point. You're asking me why he would do that, and I would say because the other options are worse from his perspective.
Well, that's not what I asked. Somebody asked why is he waiting? Because waiting makes it worse, not better.
Well, I mean, you might think that's true, but I'm not sure Trump thinks that's true. I think if Trump thought that it would be best to attack on Monday, he would have attacked on Monday. I mean, but yeah, no, I get that you question my entire premise, and that I understand that But again,
I get your premise. So the guys in Iran, like Marandi and those guys, they're acting. They think that Trump will attack. They act on the assumption that he will attack again. I thought it was stupid to attack the first time, so I kind of thought that he wouldn't. So I don't want to make a prediction here because, again, like using Ian's rule, I don't want to devote more thought to it than the person actually responsible for the act.
If you understand how I do that, everything driving this is the pursuit of global hegemony for the Western elites, for the Western capitalist class, the Western oligarchy, the transnational Western oligarchy. They're interested in achieving global hegemony, and so they haven't given up on that effort, and so they're having they're encountering difficulties and obstacles, but they haven't made a choice to just have peace, prosperity, and multipolarity. Like they haven't made that decision yet. And so they're still, thinking that they can pursue this strategy of a global energy monopoly, weaponizing that energy against their rivals, namely China. And so we can see that, the hits on Russian oil infrastructure, energy infrastructure continues. We can see that the blockade of the Strait of Hormuz continues. And we can see, munitions and troops and carriers flooding into the Persian Gulf area in preparation for another round of attack. And like you had stated, Indy, I agree with you. If that happens, Iran could very well make Qatar, Kuwait, and the UAE uninhabitable. Like that could be the legitimate result of this bombing. So given all that, I think that's the sacrifice that people are trying to push Trump into doing, and they might not be pushing Trump. Trump might be on board with that, but ultimately,
why would the Arabs go along with that?
I mean,
well, the Arabs aren't calling
the
the shots, Ian. The Arabs don't call the shots.
Well,
yeah, those are not like real countries.
I mean, they are calling the shots. Then why would they stay with the USA if that results in them losing their money? Is it class loyalty to American oligarchs? I am going to be poor, so Trump can make more money on the war. I mean, what is the?
No, I don't think that they have any kind of sovereignty. I don't think they have any kind of what's that word? They don't have any power. Like they ultimately exist to the benefit of the West. And if they cross the West, they would be destroyed. They would be taken out.
Those are not real countries, man. They're just like they're just like rump parts of an empire.
I agree. I mean, they're pseudo states, but they're family.
Yeah, they're family.
Why would
families with power
say I'm going to lose all of my assets because Trump wants?
No, because all of their assets are controlled by the West. The West can seize their bank accounts. The West can probably just assassinate all of them.
Their weapons are geolocked. Like they're. Yeah, I think they're not really the relevant. So we're talking about this in terms of the U.S.'s plan or the empire's plan. I mean, there's a saying from the Quran, but which says like let them scheme for a little while, but like Allah is the best of planners. Like there's other people with plans. So like Iran has a plan, China has a plan, Russia has a plan. And it's sort of like, I think this is a moment where the sort of subject of history is changing. As in the subject is always America's doing this, or the empire's thinking that, or what are they going to do? What's Trump going to think? To be honest, I don't think about that as much anymore. I think the subject of history is changing. I think about like, what is Iran thinking? Like, what is China thinking? What is Russia thinking? I also think about like, what am I thinking? Like, what is Sri Lanka thinking? Like other people, like there's other subjects. So multipolarity it's happening, and it's happened to a large degree. So Iran's plans are that it now controls the Strait of Hormuz, and it will control the Strait of Hormuz under any possible arrangement. It will. So when you talk about a reopening, like it's going to reopen in a very different way. And Sri Lanka's happy to deal with Iran. China's happy to deal with Iran. So Iran is the new, I guess you can use hegemon, but it's like the new hegemon of that region. And it'll take some time to play out.
And the question becomes, is the United States going to allow that? I think
the question is, what are they going to do about it?
No, like, and that's what I'm saying. They're going to destroy the planet, Indy. It's a bust out. It's a planetary bust out.
Why would the planet let the USA destroy the planet? Why would the planet let the USA? Is it?
I think the planet might, but I don't.
They have I don't think.
The USA could not even destroy Iran. You're telling me, but they could destroy every Arab country. They could destroy the world. I mean,
to go back, they couldn't destroy Yemen either. So the U.S. Navy historically lost to Yemen. So the U.S. naval supremacy was lost in Yemen, and I'd argue that their air supremacy was lost to Iran, and the ground supremacy. I mean, are we even talking about that? They can't field a real army. They couldn't field like a citizens' army since Vietnam. They can't even really set foot in Iran. So, they can't enforce it anymore. That other people have asserted power the only way they understand, through force. So, I mean, from my perspective, I think they've been in a long retreat since Vietnam. They tried to conquer the world after World War II, and it's only after World War II for white people. But they've tried to take over the world, and they had their run, and now it's over. Other people, like the world is taking over itself. Is it a planetary bust out? Will they destroy everything? But yeah, like Ian was saying, like they can't destroy Iran. They can't destroy Yemen. They can't even destroy Gaza. As in, Gaza, Hamas, and the Palestinian resistance is still there. Like they're still standing. So, I mean, as Kissinger said, the guerrilla army wins if it doesn't lose, and they haven't lost. So I don't think that they're a relevant actor anymore. So I actually spend less and less time thinking. I don't read anything Trump says, and I spend less and less time thinking about what America thinks.
Again, not to belabor the point, but what I'm focusing on is because I really believe that there will be a global economic catastrophe. I think that global economic catastrophe will result from bombing Iran and Iran retaliating, and all of West Asian oil energy infrastructure will be taken offline for years to come. And I think that'll have catastrophic effects on the global economy. And the question is, why did that happen? And so this is why I focus on the United States, because it's not just the United States. It's the transnational Western oligarch class, that is driving this, and this is being driven because they want to defeat their rivals and attain this unipolar hegemony, and they haven't given up on that. And in a way, this pursuit is inexorable. In a way, they can't really stop themselves because it's the logic of monopoly capital. It's the logic of just having total hegemony, political power on the planet. And so, they're just forced to identify threats and go after those threats. And I don't think they have a stop, or much less a reverse. And so the reason I think they have the power, right? The West is still powerful, and they're able to use these standoff weapons, destroy Iranian energy production capacity. They're able to destroy the systems that hold the oil, oil capacity. They're able to destroy pumps and pipelines, and they haven't done that. They didn't do that in the first bombing, and everybody Trump consistently threatens to do it in the next time, and then Iran counters that if you do that to us, we're going to do that to the Gulf states. And so I think, again, a lot of people want that to happen, and they want it to happen not just because of Iran, because they're thinking big picture. They're thinking in terms of hegemony, and they're thinking in terms of China and this window of opportunity closing to really hurt China by cutting them off from global energy supplies. And it's this is what I see happening. This is why I assume that in the near future, Trump will someday not taco, right? So he's tacoed 3 or 4 times, big threats, pump and dump on the market, and all that is true. But ultimately, a decision has to be made. He's on the precipice. He can't stay on the precipice. He's got to decide. Is he going to just retreat and accept multipolarity, or is he going to double down and go? And again, I think this plan has been, I think it's going to fail. Like you said, Indy, it might have worked, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. It's not going to work this time, but it's the plan that's been put in place, and it's been, it's predicated on the U.S. and shale oil, and the U.S. having the ability to monopolize global energy and really weaponize that monopoly against those countries who are intransigent and who are rivals and don't do what they say. So they think that by just creating an energy scarcity and then monopolizing the energy that's left, they can weaponize that monopoly against China before China has total energy independence. So these are the broad strokes of their plan, and you can read this in their own policy papers. They talk a lot about global energy dominance. They talk a lot about containing China is their number one security goal. They call it security. And I think we haven't seen it, and I'm hoping.
I still think jumping to China from all this is like a huge leap. There's no direct connection to China. Like China doesn't import such a huge amount of its energy even through Hormuz. And China has more reserves. It can wait stuff out longer. Again, if China's in any position, they're in the position of the USA in World War II, where they benefit from, I think we might as well call it World War III. They benefit from World War III. They come on top, not because of World War III, but industrially, they're the best positioned to benefit from the rest of the world fighting.
Yeah,
it's a huge sort of assumption
you're pivoting to is the plan going to be successful, or is it futile? And I agree with you. The plan is futile.
No, I mean,
China.
it's like Hitler's plan, right? Like he had a plan. He was going to go like seize the oil in the Caucasus. He'd already taken Romania. He's going to go for Moscow. Like it was a plan. But then some point, after Stalingrad, it was a bad plan, but they just followed through with it anyway. And I think Gaza was their Stalingrad. Like I think, or you could say that I don't know, Ukraine was some other battle. We're at like Operation Bagration now, where they start getting pushed back. There was a plan. And if you look at World War II, more Nazis died after Stalingrad, basically after they were losing than before. And the U.S. can certainly do a lot of damage after the battle has been lost, but I think historically it's been lost.
No, I fully agree. I'm thinking, I'm just trying to explain why I'm certain that things are going to get a lot worse, and and the thought process behind it. But I hope I'm wrong. I'm hoping.
No. So the question is, worse for whom, right? Because you could look at it as like an inversion. So there was a long time when Iran was under sanctions. It was bad for them. Iran was under sanctions. Like North Korea will be under sanctions. Russia was under sanctions. What's happening now is better for Iran. So Iran has made more money now. I think they made their year's worth of money in a few months. Like they're in a better situation now. So there was only, I did a map once of where U.S. military troops were, and it's bloody everywhere. And Iran and like China are like the few places that held out. But the world is slowly like inverting, as in now the U.S. is under sanctions. The U.S. can't get its stuff through. The U.S. and its like allies or vassals or whatever can't get their stuff through. So it's inverting. So you say that it's bad, and yes, people will die, unfortunately, yeah. But this is the unplugging from, you talk about the global economy. It's not necessarily the global economy. What's happening is the imperial economy is falling apart. But there is an actual global economy. I mean, around this region, the Indian Ocean, we were trading quite freely before the Portuguese. We can go back to that. We just need the American bases out and the American ships to leave. And they will leave. And then there will actually be a global economy. So it has to be maybe born out of these ashes, and one hopes the ashes aren't too ashy. But
right. No, I agree. And I mean, again, I think we're saying the same thing in just different ways. I'm a little more certain that it will be ashy. And because the alternative, there's no alternative. The alternative is the impossible, just retreat, and I just don't see that as
all they have is a hammer, so everything looks like a nail.
And so I'm certain that the future will be ashy, and I'm trying to explain why. But you're absolutely right. Like, this is the end of Western hegemony, and it is the beginning of opportunities. And it's going to be, there's going to be tremendous opportunities like never ever before. And I think one way to describe that is socialism, right? Like, I mean, China is just demonstrating how a socialism is way superior to capitalism. And so everybody's going to see that. Everybody's going to see what China has accomplished, and everybody's going to want to be like China, and everybody's going to demand that their government is, more like China. How come China gets all this great stuff and we get, fucking oligarchs?
Yeah, and I think that's an important point, right? Because what you're looking at now with the collapse of Western empire, of white empire, is that you're seeing like what it's like if markets run everything. So markets will do crazy stuff like this, like blow up a country to make money off of weapons, or to shoot your competitors in the oil business to make some temporary money out of oil. Like, that's what markets running a country will look like. So obviously it's better to have, to me, like, socialism is just the simple idea that like governments should do stuff, and it should do it in the interest of the people. Yeah. It's not like a mind-boggling idea. Even like Iran is run under a completely different system, but still does the same stuff. Like even in an Islamic government, you still have that same basic sense of like government should do stuff for the people. Russia is run under not a socialist system, still has that same basic sense of government do things for people. But if you have a country run by the market, then it's of course going to do dumb shit to make the market go up. And you're seeing the end of that. And the alternative to that, is socialism, or just being fundamentally like not a sociopath.
Why is it so difficult to consider the possibility that what was said was true? Israel did convince Trump that it would be easy to attack Iran. It turned out to not be easy, and Trump is unhappy. The American side is unhappy because they're obviously like, it wasn't easy. We got stuck in this quagmire. Now they're trying to get out of the quagmire without looking weak. I mean, it's just it's a very simple explanation without getting into conspiracy theories that they're planning to destroy the world, that they're actually, it's 12-dimensional chess to attack China. I mean, look, guys, if they wanted to hurt China, the easiest way to do it would be like Iran. Hey, guess what, Iran? We will unfreeze your assets. Just sell us the oil and not China. I mean, I know people argue, oh, Iran loves China. They wouldn't betray China. Yes, they would. Yes, they fucking would.
Yeah,
I
if
mean,
you want to hurt China, you do like the Sino-Soviet split or something like that. You don't throw like Iran and Russia and China in together. I think you're right in how it happened. Like, yeah, so Israel, blackmail, whatever. But I think why it happened is they were going to attack Iran since 1979. Like, ever since anybody declared independence from the empire, that's a problem. And it just coded in there. And it's got to play out. So if you read this not as like the news, but as in a history book, you're like, yeah, okay. So what is 50 years? It's like a rounding error in the history books. This is going to happen. They were going to attack Iran. Israel was never going to be satisfied with like half of Palestine or even half of that whole region. So it's just what we're seeing is like decades of stuff play out. So in the news, it can be, oh, because of this personality or that thing or this blackmail or whatever. And that is how it plays out. That's not why it plays out.
I do think I really think a lot of it is the Israel lobby. And I don't think that's anti-Semitic to say. I mean, if you look at what conservatives say,
you can say Jewish people if you want, man. I'm fine with me.
You can even look at what war. I mean, if you look at like even in 2003, the invasion of Iraq, you had conservatives. You had people like Pat Buchanan who are like, there's literally no reason to attack Iraq. You could just tell Saddam you want to fight, because the whole justification was Al Qaeda and blah blah blah. It's like, if you want, you could pay Saddam to fight Al Qaeda for you. There's literally
Saddam was their guy. Like Saddam was the guy they threw against Iran.
Right. It was Israel that wanted to take out Saddam because besides Iran, he was their number one threat in the region to Israeli hegemony. Iran is
like Israel. I think Israel is just the last ghetto for the Jews. It's like the Europeans, the Americans didn't want Jews after World War II. They put them there to do. So Israel is, you could say the Israel lobby is corrupting them or they're corrupting it. Like, to me, it doesn't matter. Like, from my perspective in Sri Lanka, it's all one white empire to me. But like, who controls who? I don't know. I'm like, tail, dog, just one bitch to me.
Well, and my own perspective, I don't see a distinction between Israel and California and the United States. Like, it's all the same entity. Israel just happens to be, over in the Middle East, but they're the 51st state. They're not a distinct entity. And again, they're owned by the same transnational oligarchy that owns Europe, that owns the United States. And, what they're pursuing is their global class interests, and so I think it was a different framework. There's a fundamental liberal framework that sees nation states and believes that nation states are, have national interests and they pursue those national interests. And if you have that framework, a very rigid framework, and you don't see class, then yeah, it makes sense that, Israel must have gotten the United States to, fight their wars for them. But if you think about a transnational class that has, planetary hegemonic interests, all of that thinking kind of, doesn't make sense.
Why would it? I mean, if it's a transnational class, like you claim, oh, it's class loyalty, they're all in it together. Why didn't they pay Saddam? Why didn't they pay Iran? It's like, hey, we will pay you to be on our side. I mean, it wouldn't even cost as much as they spent on the war.
Well, Saddam was on their side until he got,
Israel said they wanted
he started doing his own thing. And guess who else was on their side? Hitler was on their side until he started doing their own thing. So, there's a long history of the capitalist class trying to use people and nations and governments to benefit their class interests. That doesn't work out always how they want it to. It didn't work out how they wanted to
in attacking Iraq. I mean, I think it's relevant to Iran. What was the class interest in invading Iraq? The oil companies were against it. What Daryl just commented is true. The oil companies were against attacking Iraq.
Well, I mean, now all the Iraqi oil revenue is running through the New York Federal Reserve.
It's running through, well, it is, but it's mostly owned by China and Europe.
But I'm still controlling the.
There was maybe one oil field that went to an American company, but
so Billy Bob talks about class interests, which obviously is important. But I view capital as honestly like a species of sort of artificial life, and it like wants to eat. It wants to eat resources. It doesn't see the political lines or the political benefits. There's some resources in Iraq, eat it. Some resources in Iran, try and eat it. Like it just wants to eat, and it shits out waste, heat. It doesn't care.
I mean, wouldn't Saddam be perfectly happy with running his oil revenue through the New York Stock Exchange if they offered it to him? Do you think Saddam would say no if that was offered to him?
I think it's like someone who's only robbed. Like they've only robbed, so they don't actually know how to go into a store and put stuff in a basket and check out. I think like the United States is never just of course, logically you could do stuff normally. You could trade with all these people. You could even trade with them deviously. You could trade with them on unfair terms. They had all that, but it's a colonial enterprise. The business has always been smash and grab. The business has been smash and grab for hundreds of years. That's what the beast has evolved to do. So it's like asking a T-Rex to play the fiddle. Like it's just not what it does.
I don't think that's
It's
a real
the same thing in Panama, right? In Panama, the leader of Panama became intransigent, and so they just removed him. You know, he used to work for them, and then he started doing his own thing, and they didn't like it, so they took him out. And so it's the same thing in Iraq. You know, it's about hegemony, it's about control. And when individuals do not, submit to control, they get taken out. I'm not sure what about that concept is difficult to.
And it's, if you go back to the mafia example, right? Like the mafia could just like run normal businesses and make money for longer, but it's like not what they do. It's not their business model. And if you work in business, certain businesses have business models. And so the Western business model has always been go somewhere, take the land, take the resources, kill the people. So it's like asking Toys R Us to make like pudding or something. It's not what it does.
It benefits from war. I mean, there's a huge economic plus side to war, especially with the Western military industrial complex. And so that's got to be factored in too. Whereas,
as Madeleine Albright said, like, what's the point of having this military if you don't use it? Like all this stuff, like, oh, we waste so much money in the military. We spend so many bombs. That's showing up on someone's balance sheet as profit.
I get that you can't see the logic, Ian, but I think there's still logic there. That's my argument. I mean, there's logic to it.
I think you're contradicting yourself. Okay. You are contradicting yourself because you want to say, oh, it's this plan to encircle China, but then I ask you, well, okay, how did it make sense to bankrupt the country? I mean, literally, the U.S. is driven to the edge of bankruptcy by attacking Iraq. Iran is threatening to destroy the economy, but you're saying, well, because they can't think in those terms. So it's like, okay, are they capable? Okay, let me ask you this: are they capable of planning, or are they not capable of planning? You can't argue both at the same time.
Well, so one example is there was like an algorithm, like not an AI. This is before that, but someone asked it to program it to build something out of blocks and to like move forward. And so what the algorithm figured out was that if it just builds blocks really high and it falls over, then it moves forward. So that's like how it figured out. So if you think about capital as something that doesn't see stuff the way we do, if it can just build up, because they did build up Iraq and then just knock it over, that's a way to move forward. If it builds up like any place and then just knocks it over, and the whole capitalist cycle is based on these like crashes. That's just how it perceives the world. It doesn't perceive stuff the way we do. It can't have 5-year plans. Like you said, Ian, it's quarterly thinking. It doesn't perceive stuff the same way. And if it can just move forward a little bit this way, that is how it will evolve to move. Because it's not going to perceive stuff the way we do unless you take socialist or communist control of it and like force these markets to like perceive things in a certain way that it won't naturally do.
Right, and I agree. But how do we turn it into it's this 5-year plan to encircle China? Because I mean, I just told you, Billy Bob, if you want it, and I don't even think there's disagreement here. If the goal was to hurt China, you could pay these countries just not to deal with China.
Well, and I think fundamentally they can't hurt China. I think China has its own agency, which has not even been demonstrated yet. But I think China is so far beyond these guys. I think it's actually not even funny.
And they're not about hiring people to do what they want. They're about control. They're about having slaves, not hirelings.
They hire people all the time, though.
No, I think they pay people, but you can have rich slaves. Like Young Dolph said that, but like, yeah, you can. It's their business model. It's the mafia business model. The mafia can't actually run a successful restaurant. They like do not know how. It's just not. It's not their business model. Different businesses have different business models, and the colonial business model has always been smash and grab and bust out.
And allowing Iran to have sovereignty and trying to bribe them to not do business with China, that's not their business model. They want control. They want to control it's hegemony. It's global hegemony. It's control of every market resource and government on the planet. And anybody that, gets in the way of that is targeted. And
yeah, I think it's a two-sided model. They want either control or chaos. Like say UAE, they have control. And if they can't have Iran, they're quite happy to have just chaos there.
Yeah, look at Libya. I mean, that's a perfect example. Just turned it into a failed state, and you can't do anything. And Syria, same thing with Syria.
And that's the goal for Russia. Like they just like want chaos.
So there's a theory, which I read actually yesterday. I hadn't heard of it before. I mean, I had this thought in my head, but I hadn't read it till yesterday. So it's small state escalation diplomacy, and the argument is that if you're a small country, you are going to be much more aggressive, actually, than a large country. And the reason why is because there's lots to gain by dragging your larger allies into wars on your behalf. So it is actually beneficial from a small country's perspective to be very aggressive and antagonistic if you have larger allies. And the goal is to entangle those larger allies into your wars for you. So that explains Ukraine's actions, and to an extent explains Israel's actions. And I don't know.
I don't think they have that much agency, man.
I don't think what the hang up is with Israel, because they do. Israel does benefit from toppling Iraq. It does benefit from toppling Iran. If they did topple Iran, which didn't work, I agree with everyone on this panel that it didn't work. But if the USA did, if it did topple Iran, Israel would be the superpower. Just like Indi was saying, this will probably leave Iran as the top dog in the region and as that global.
Israel's not a real country. Like Billy Bob said, it's the 51st state. I think what's happening with Israel or Ukraine is it's pretty just classic divide and conquer. Like Nasrallah said, Israel is put there specifically to divide the region. So you put some basically European fake Semites in there to divide that region. Just like Ukraine is like setting Slav against Slav to divide that region. Divided. It's not like the tail doesn't wag the dog in that sense. Israel's not in a good situation. They're still like on the front lines. I was reading this book, The Last Million, about basically when they got kicked out of Europe after World War II, and people were the Jews that got sent to Israel were like, why are we in another war zone? I mean, that doesn't absolve them for like all the madness they've done, but that's a conscript colony. That's there for the empire's interests. And Ukraine is like, how do they benefit? They like lose half their population just for like this has happened all throughout colonialism. You get some small corrupt class, they can corrupt a whole country that way, and then you use it to divide and conquer a region. It's just, to me, it's just classic divide and conquer. It's not like a small state like Sri Lanka. There's no situation where we're playing India like off Nepal or something. India would be playing us in that situation.
Indi, I know you have to go soon. I love arguing with Ian. And
yeah, you guys are great because you guys are friends, and then you like argue with each other. It's great. No, but it's good. You need to have argument on it for a debate.
But yeah, no, I don't want to hold you captive to our discussion. And I know it's late, and you've given us a good hour, and we've really had a lot of live viewers. I've never had this many live viewers, and so I'm going to credit Indi and his big fan base for.
Dude, I don't know. I'll credit you to you guys. Thank you for having me, and it's always a great debate.
Ian, you want to continue discussing?
Yeah, I'm gonna bounce. I've got to take my kids to school in the morning. But it was nice to see you, Ian. It's nice to see you, Billy Bob. Take care.
Thanks, Indi. We'll have you back soon. Thank you so much.
Yeah, please, anytime.
So, no, it's. I'm willing to answer your questions as best I can, Ian, and I appreciate your vehement disagreement and your real frustration with me and my inability to think outside of my box.
No, it's good. But no, and I do need to go to use the toilet. But yes, I don't know. I think it is a good ending plan. I do understand the point, and I do think we'll just have to wait and see if the world is destroyed next week on Monday. I will have to send you a pigeon with a message, on saying, Billy Bob, you were right.
Yeah. And let me say, if your framework is correct, Ian, I mean, why doesn't Israel just bomb Iran 4 weeks ago and just kick it off? If they're really interested in the United States defeating Iran for them, why isn't Israel dragging us into war? Like, why is it up to Trump? I mean, I think this is more evidence that Israel is not dictating things. That this is Israel is a tool of Western imperialism.
Well, if they're well, it's hard to say. I mean, if they bomb someone without the USA's,
they could be walk themselves out on a ledge.
Right. They need the USA's support. I mean, it doesn't mean that they're beholden to the USA. It just means they can't win a war without the USA's support. I think that's absolutely true. It's not.
But if they control the U.S., like, how could the U.S. not help them? But anyway, no, I mean, we'll see. So I just think it's two fundamental different frameworks to understand things. And your framework gets you towards thinking that it's Israel pulling the strings, whereas my framework sees a class of people, utilizing states to further their class interests. And okay, so let's, on that note, a lot of live viewers. Thank you so much. We will probably be reconvening on Friday. I was off last week because I had some training at work that precluded any streaming, but we're back. And then, we hope to see you guys on Friday. Thank you very much, Ian. Thank you, viewers. We will see you then.